Okay, so we're back to Hilchos Basar B'Chalav. We're holding Siman Tzadik Aleph. We left off before Pesach with Siman Tzadik, where we covered the various halachas concerning Kachal, the udder of the cow, which is an interesting area of halacha because it concerns the mutter dika way of being able to somewhat taste Basar B'Chalav. Even though obviously if you want to have Kachal, there is a special unique way on how to prepare it. Nonetheless, there are various chilukim there between the Chaber and the Ramah on how to go about it, whether you're cooking it or whether you're roasting it. We're machmir. We're machmir in the case of Kachal to do it right, even though the halacha is somewhat different. If b'di'evet things did not happen the way they should have happened, because it's not a real Basar B'Chalav. That's where we left off. That was Siman Tzadik. Siman Tzadik Aleph is back to halachas that are much more shayach. And that's din Basar B'Chalav shenis arvu. Basar B'Chalav that got mixed up. Now, got mixed up, what does mixed up mean? Mixed up could happen in various ways. It could happen through bishul, it could happen through Melicha, it could happen through tzli. In the first halachas at least, we will be seeing the simplest scenario, where Basar B'Chalav are not hot, not salty, not fried. They're simply together, touching each other. What is it in the gabe that? Is there any problem with that? Just in close proximity. The source for this, for the first few halachas and the first few simis in the Mishnah in Chulin Kuf Zayin Amud Beis, that is mashma there, that a person can, let's say if he's going on the road, he's going for a picnic, going on a trip, Sorer Adam Basar Gvina B'mitpachat Achat, as it says there. You can package, we can use the word package, Sorer, you can bundle up meat and cheese in one mitpachat, in one handkerchief, in one cloth. It was basically put them together, as long as, bilvad, shelo yu nogim ze bezeh, as long as they're not really touching each other. We don't want them touching, even if they're cold. But you can bundle them up together. Now, what's the problem here? Bundling them? Yeah, I mean, we were concerned, as we saw before, with all kinds of halachas involving harchaka. Harchaka of two people, for example, eating, one is eating steak, one is having pizza on the same table. We don't want things to mix. So obviously there are harchakas in Basar B'Chalav, even if they are cold. We don't want the bits sticking. And even though, as we will see, there are quite a few circumstances where the halacha is different if they did touch. Nevertheless, lechatchila, one does definitely have to be careful, even if things are cold and there's not a problem of so much of absorption. You still have to be careful. So that's we see that in the Makor, in the Mishnah, and as the Abaya is mevar in the Gemara, that even though we're talking about tzoinen b'tzoinen, even though we're talking about that the two of them are cold, nevertheless, and therefore you won't even need a klipa. Klipa, which is one of it's the second least amount that needs to be removed. I call it the second least because we will see the hadacha, even less than that. Hadacha meaning rinsing. You have klipa, you have something called kedetila, which is much more than a klipa, which is just a little bit off the surface. And then of course you have something which is more than a kedetila, where you actually have to be mevatal b'shishim, you have to look at the whole thing becomes aser. So depending on the amount of heat, depending on the way the iser and the heter are combined, whether it's kovush, that we've learned various areas of kovush, when something is in brine, when something is even sitting in water for over 24 hours. The effect of the sitting, of the immersion in that liquid does something. It's not bishul gomor, but it's kovush kemevushal. When we're talking about iser v'heter, Basar B'Chalav has to have real bishul for it to be midoraisa Basar B'Chalav. But nevertheless, midorabanan, you could definitely have a problem here. There's something that is absorbed, something that happens chemically when you do kovush. Something happens obviously when there's some heat involved. So from this Gemara we see that there is a concern, even if they're both tzoinen, that even though there will be, as the Abai says, there will be no need for a klipa, if they end up touching each other, there will be a need for hadacha. So from that sugya, from that Gemara, that Mishnah, we do see that at the very least, if Basar B'Chalav, here we're not even talking about Isser and Heter, but some of these halachas will be the same by Isser and Heter too. If they two touch each other, and we're talking about tzoinen, they're both at tzoinen, then at the very least you need hadacha. Dacha means to rinse. There are poskim that actually go into further detail. What does rinsing actually mean? Does rinsing mean you shuf, to scrub it? How hard do you need to scrub? So I'm not going to get into that right now, because the simple understanding from reading the halacha, from reading the Noise Kelim here, without going into what the Mishnah Berurah writes and what others write in other areas of halacha, where this could be shaya, for example, chametz. Right? What if chametz touches matzah? We'll talk a little bit about today too. Gemara Pesachim. So that's a form of Isser and Heter, at least on Pesach. Chametz a whole year is not a problem, but on Pesach it's considered an Isser. So there, would we be satisfied with just hadacha? What kind of a hadacha? But hadacha basically means rinsing. You would have to rinse it off. Make sure that there's no pirurim, no bits, no pieces left on one or the other. On the basar and not on the gvina, obviously. Most likely there might be more gvina stuff on the basar than basar stuff on the gvina, if they're both cold, because the gvina, depending on the type of cheese, is a little fattier, greasy. And if they touch, there may be something left over. So it's Mashra Abaye says that even though you're right, that they're both soinen and there's no need for a klipa, there would be a need for a dacha. And because there will be a need for a dacha, as you can see base, you don't take a chance. You don't say, well, I'm going to do hadacha anyway. No. You may forget. Okay? Because this could present a problem and you require hadacha, just don't do it. Don't put them where they can touch each other. We don't want you to do hadacha. The dacha is just a b'diavad, but it's not a lechatchila situation. So, in explaining Seif Aleph, the Mechaber says, Basar ugvina shenogu ze bezeh, if they did touch, mutarim, they are permitted, you can have them. You have to rinse the place where they touch, the point of contact. Therefore, mutar latsur otam mitpachat achat. You can put them in one bundle, you can bundle them up, take them to the park. We're not really that concerned that they may come to touch. You obviously don't want to put them next to each other, that you do that, right? But as far as they may come to touch each other, no. And now, in the refrigerator, you also have to be a little bit careful. Obviously, you don't want to put things next. You have a stove. You don't want to cook fleischiks at the same time. Even though they're separate pots, separate burners, one can spill over into another one. In the fridge, too. Cold, yes, but it could spill over. Any time where things may come to touch, you don't want to put them too close to each other. That's a simple halacha. So the Mechaber says only that if they did touch, mutar, but they need hadacha. The Shach on this says that here, even though the Mechaber did not elaborate more here, he did a little bit later more. But it's unclear what he holds here. These two basar and the gvina, does it matter if they're both dry? Or what if one is moist? Or is it only when one is moist, or both are moist? So the Shach says that this halacha is only when one of them is moist. That's where the problem is more of an issue, and that is where the din of hadacha is required. What that means is that if they were both in fact completely dry, you wouldn't even need hadacha, supposedly. So the Shach again says, at least the Shach, and later on we'll see the Taz too, says that this halacha is referring to a situation where one of them is lach. In Sif Hey we see there is later on Sif Hey there is a mention of the two being yovish, that the halacha is a little bit different. Later on, however, there are scenarios involving if one is salty or they're both salty, which changes the whole thing. I mean, cheese can be salty. Feta cheese is salty. And the halacha is quite different when things are spicy and fatty and salty. So when things would be, if they both, so far we see from the Shach at least, that if they both would be completely dry, even hadacha would not be required. The Taz. Taz brings the following situation. Even though he's a little... Huh? Oh yeah, it was bronchitis. And this is, I don't know if I've ever had this before. It's almost 4 weeks. They said that the cough portion, not the fever or the phlegm, can last for a whole month. Yeah, it's bacteria. Shlomo Melech says in Mishlei, Tzinim pachim b'derech ikeh shomer nafsho yirchak mehem. Colds and flus and the like are are things that you can catch. You have to be careful. You have to dress right. You want to make sure you don't. But bacteria is very difficult to avoid. You touch people's hands. You have to really make sure you wash your hands. I mean, you come in contact with people. We're not talking about something viral anymore. We're talking about bacteria. What are you going to do? You can't see them. You can't see the bacteria. It's everywhere. You touch money, touch people's hands. You walk. Even if you dress right, bacteria is bacteria. People can catch it easily. Baruch Hashem, we have antibiotics, at least in the past 60, 70 years, that is able to help with this.
I heard I'm not a big fan of antibiotics. I've encountered the same bacteria, they're learning.
Right, that's true. But if you want a quick fix for the fever especially, you don't want to have 104 and 105, which I had. Yeah, you don't want to have high fevers. It's not healthy. Unless you have, for sure, the natural, what do they call them? Where penicillin is taken from. It's taken from this fungus. Yeah, if you know where to get them, the thing that heal yourself, of course, you're taking the natural antibiotic and somehow cure it. Nature will fight it off eventually, but that eventually, in the meantime, you don't feel good, you can't sleep well, the fatigue, so you take medicine. Yeah, unfortunately, we want to feel better as soon as possible. All right, so the Taz is a little bit ahead. The Taz, even though he goes back and forth with the various details of the following halacha, he goes to the next point, which is, okay, what do we do? A situation does require hadacha and hadacha was not done. What if somebody cooked this meat without hadacha? Now, this is an interesting situation because we mentioned it a little bit in Taaruvot, and we'll see it later on too. What happens when something requires a klipa and you did not take off a klipa? Oh, you cannot take off a klipa. Where can you not take off a klipa? If it's liquid. How do you take a klipa from a liquid? Right? From a solid, you can remove it. Slice it off. So what do you do when you cannot take off the klipa when you're required to take off a klipa? Or what happens when you cannot take off a klipa? Klipa may be required, like in a liquid. Now, as you know, klipa may be required in various kinds of situations, including tatar govar. In a situation where tatar govar, meaning the one on the bottom is cold, the one on the bottom and the top is hot. So because the tatar is the cold, the top one only needs a klipa. You still need something. So there's a din of klipa mechumra, there's a din of klipa dina. There's differences of why we need a klipa. So we will see that will determine the halacha of what happens if it's a machlokes. Today we'll cover the machlokes a little bit of who holds what as far as if you need it and you didn't do it, and what the makor for all of this is. But the Taz concerning hadacha, without getting into klipa yet, concerning hadacha, the Taz says what happens if you cooked it without hadacha. The basar or the quihin, it makes no difference. And he says that b'di'evet there's no yisur. All he says is that he brings there is a raya from Sif Dalet, where a klipa is discussed. He says, and even over there by klipa we have a machlokes, whether you cook them without taking it, but that it's okay. Since over there some say that it's okay, kol shekain. He says kol shekain, that by hadacha it would be okay. It should be okay. Now, I was surprised when I went through this whole sugya that there are some who say the exact opposite. That by hadacha, it's not a kol shekain. That by hadacha you would need, as opposed to by klipa. It's very interesting, depending on how you look at it. Then we'll discuss briefly the different shitas on the difference between hadacha and klipa. Why one may be more of a problem than the other. But the Taz, all he says is, without getting into too much explanation of why he's mekel, he's lenient, all he says is, listen, if later on in Sif Dalet, klipa, it has a machlokes, he says, kol shekain hadacha. If over there, b'di'evet, you didn't work mekalef, you didn't peel, it's okay, then kol shekain linyan hadacha. But he doesn't say why. What's mashma from the Taz, is, as is mashma, I think, from the majority of poskim, that the reason why we're not so makpid or machmir if hadacha was not done and you want to have it cooked, because in this case the hadacha is all it is a chumrah. That's what is mishtameh. That is what's understood. But the Taz doesn't really say why. All it says is it's a kol shekain. Only if it's lach. Suppose so far we know. Because remember, one second. What is lach? One of them has a little bit lach moist. Well, what we said, as the Shach explains, that's the only time we need hadacha. If the two of them are yavesh, as we're going to see later on, except for the Ramah, almost everybody says it's not a problem at all. You don't even need hadacha. So when do you need hadacha? When one of them has lachluchit, has moisture. So all the Taz says is, he brings the kol shekain, but it's apparent that he's saying it's a chumrah. And if it's a chumrah, we're not so concerned if you didn't do it b'di'evet. Chavas das brings two reasons why b'di'evet is okay. That you did not do hadacha, you were supposed to do hadacha. He says hadacha is a chumrah. That's number one. Number two, even if you say that Medina or choishesh that maybe something was nitbak, something did get stuck, more likely than not, when you ended up cooking it, there was shishim connect. Because something that requires hadacha is not even a klipa, remember. Poshup pshat, without getting into it from a different angle. Poshup pshat. Hadacha implies that what I have there is very, very little, even less than a klipa apparently, and therefore more likely than not, if I did cook it, I most likely have shishim connect. That's what the Chavas Das says. Why b'di'evid? Something that required hadacha and what was not performed would be interesting. He goes on to explain that actually, he's not saying this on his own, that he has a raya from the Rashba, where the Rashba's example is somebody by mistake used a kara, a bowl, a pot, that it was ordinarily used to cook up meat, and they didn't wash it out. They didn't rinse it out, they didn't wash it out, it still had some leftovers in it. And he put some cheese in there. Somebody put some cheese in there. That if you went ahead and took that cheese and you cooked it without a dacha, that it's mutter. Why? No, not in that same pot, right? Because of bitul b'shish. In other words, even if something got stuck to that cheese from the leftovers, that it wasn't, you didn't scrub it enough, you didn't clean it well, it's bitul b'shish. So apparently these are minute amounts. A keli that is not mudach, heitev, that is not cleansed well. It's, sometimes you can see it. You take it out of the dishwasher, or whoever washed the dish, you didn't do a good job. You see? But that's even less. That's just a little bit. But sometimes when things are dirty, they're dirty. Except that they may not be as dirty if you did an initial rinsing. When would somebody do an initial rinsing? This is an interesting question that came up Yontav. What's an initial rinsing? There's a halacha that you cannot prepare from one day to the other. You cannot prepare from Shabbos to the weekday. You cannot prepare from Yontav to Shabbos, from the day of Tavshilin. You cannot prepare from one day of Yontav to the next day of Yontav. Right? It's a D'Rabbanan. You do whatever you can do only for that day. The problem is that a lot of balabostas have Yontav, I'm sure. We're not using dishwashers. You may not have maid service. You just finished your afternoon meal. You need to wash the dishes for tonight. Tonight you're going to have a second Seder. How do you do it? You can't. You can't prepare. You have to wait till it's Tzeitzak HaChavim, approximately. And then, until your husband comes home, don't worry. He'll wait. For half an hour, you can do dishes. That's what everybody's supposed to do. I'm assuming that's what they do.
He waits.
Well, he's still in shul. By the time he comes home, there's for Sarim, maybe, whatever. Anyway, what I recall is brought down in halacha, not maybe nobody exactly holds the same, but it's pashut, it's mutter, that one of the difficulties the one who washes the kelim may have is that it may be very sticky. It's dried already. So can you do an initial rinsing? Can you just fill it up with water, not wash it, so that at least it should not stick? And the answer is yes. That's not called hachana.
With water?
Yes. Okay? That's not,
Put additional water?
Yeah, I was asked that. Apparently, yes. Yes. All it is it will not allow it to stick. That's all you're doing.
Not ready for use.
It's not ready for use. You're not doing anything. Yeah. You just, instead of leaving it to dry like that, and it would become caked, I guess, very hard to, and it will be more difficult otherwise.
Of course.
So, in this way, you can just do an initial, put a little bit of water, or do something to it, and put it away, not touch it, of course, until the nighttime. I don't know where muse would come into play here.
It's disgusting.
No. There is a heter, by the way, that if you're going to use some of them in that afternoon, there's guests are coming, and then you go ahead and wash them dishes that you may use.
What it may use?
Then you're allowed to.
Still, so both is a possibility. You haven't invited anything, but just drop by.
But if there's a good chance, then, of course you're not going to do all your dishes as a result of that, but you can do some. Yeah, you can do some. Yeah.
The only, you're serve.
Yeah. If not, then of course the whole thing is for tonight. Then you cannot. You know. People want to get a head start. They have all these hours in the afternoon. Well, guess what? Yom Tov is not for washing dishes. Well, Yom Tov is Chatzi Lanu, Chatzi Hashem. Half for us, half to Hashem. Rest, enjoy, spend time with the family, learn Torah. Learn, not wash dishes. All this hard work. Prepare from one day to the next. Right? So obviously there's a reason for that. So anyway, so how did this come up? Because somebody did not fully do Hadacha completely for the first keli. He didn't do a good job. He didn't clean it very, very well. There's something left over. And as the Rashba brings down, and you by mistake, not lechatchila, you put in some cheese in there, not to cook, of course, in that pot, but somehow you left it there. And even though you did not wash that cheese later on from whatever may have gotten stuck, it's batul b'shishim. So over there, the bitul b'shishim.
So that's what we're saying.
Yes, in its own pot. Yeah, you're right. And you should do a hadacha. But so anyway, so over there, the bitul b'shishim is mentioned. That what? That apparently whatever may have, if at all, whatever may have gotten stuck to this as a result of being that pot is probably batul b'shishim. Okay, so before we go on, the Shach brings down the Bach. Go ahead.
He said it's probably b'shishim.
Yeah.
I mean, can we rely on it probably, or is it the saying it's for sure? Bottom line is, we get this low. It was for sure batul b'shishim.
Yeah, because it's so minute.
Right. So really, the probably, it's not that we're saying probably it's batul. We're saying it's batul b'shishim.
Right. Yeah, I guess there's a difference between word probably.
No, because I'm thinking in other situations where it's really probably.
Yeah.
But you don't know with certain, maybe it might be a problem.
That's
maybe
true. That's true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we may talk about that. Yeah, if we have time. Yeah. Anyways, the Shach has a lengthy discourse here through Sif Aleph and Beis concerning what the Ramah mostly wrote. There's some questions about the Ramah, and we haven't gotten to it yet. So maybe what we'll do before we see the Shach, maybe let's see Sif Beis. Then we'll go back to the Shach. Kol midah debo yadacha. Anything that requires hadacha. Kegon lehaniach basar heter tzoinen be'ka'ara shel isur tzoinen. For example, to put meat, heter, basar heter, tzoinen cold, in a ka'ara, in a bowl, in a pot, shel isur tzoinen. Also lechatchila. So here we're talking about, forget about not only basar b'chalav, but basar heter be'ka'ara shel isur. What could be a ka'ara shel isur? A barrel that had goyisha wine. Yeah, that's one of the questions. That's one of the scenarios. People want to store herring. They want to pickle their own stuff. Oh, I need a barrel. Can I store it in a barrel that had wine before it was cold? So these are some of the questions that are raised in Halacha later on. Yore Deah in Kuf Chof Aleph, I believe, of the problems associated with that, because there is a difference. There is somewhat of a difference between something that was kavush in a keli, and so the isur that is being absorbed within the walls of the container came about through kavush, and we'll talk about that now. Does it make a difference how the isur was absorbed in the keli? Through heat, cold, kavush, it was sitting there. So here in Sif Beis, therefore the Mechaber says, forget about Basar B'chalav for a moment. Anything that requires hadacha, kegoin, le'aniach basar heter, tzoinen, it's cold, beke'ar shel isur tzoinen, also lechatchila. I just want to put it down. I don't want to cook in it. Why? Why can't I put it in lechatchila? Dilmo ochil below hadacha. If it requires hadacha, we won't let you do it lechatchila because you may forget. Dilma ochil, you may come to eat it without hadacha. But the Mechaber adds, obviously, we're talking about dafka b'mevushal, delav urche be'hadacha. Something that you're about to cook does not require hadacha. Usually you don't do hadacha, so you're about to cook it. I'm sorry, it's already cooked. It's already cooked. Something that is being cooked, it usually does not necessitate a hadacha. So lav urche b'hadacha. Aval mideh de urche b'hadacha, something that may anyway require some sort of hadacha at some point. What's an example? Kigoyim basar chai, raw meat, v'chayotze bo, something similar to that. Shori lechatchila, then you can do it because you're going to wash it before you cook it. Take out a piece of meat from the freezer. You defrost it. It may be still a little bloody if it's raw. You rinse it before you cook it. Right? So things that are raw, like meat, more likely than not that you're going to rinse it. So we're not that machmir. You say, oh, you can't put it lechatchili because you're going to forget to do adacha. You can do adacha anyway. But so anything that requires adacha, we don't let you do it lechatchila. Even though the halacha, we know what the halacha b'di'evet is, lechatchila we don't let you do it. Even though we don't, in other words, we don't say go ahead and put it in there and say, okay, I'll do hadacha later. No, you may forget to do hadacha. Even though we have a din that it's b'di'evet, it's mutter. If you went ahead and cooked it and so forth, it may be mutter, right? It doesn't mean that you have the right to do it lechatchila. That's a form of bitul isur, by the way, too. Do it and you don't do the hadacha.
So you have to do it the hadacha anyway, even if it's wrong. Then it's okay. So
yeah, we still have the din of what the din of b'di'evet is when somebody cooked it without hadacha. Right? That was the Taz we began to do. Not from the Mechaber, we didn't see it yet, but we saw it from the Taz. We saw an introduction to this sugya of what happens when something requires hadacha. Later on, we'll see klipa, and you didn't do it.
The permitting you not to it. If it's something that requires hadacha, like you'd say,
right?
The Mechaber seems to lahatchila not to rinse hadacha.
No, he says you can go ahead and put it down in the kara, right? Call me the deboya dacha, right?
So that's something that now became the answer. Asur lahatchila because it requires hadacha. Because maybe you without hadacha, bedafka mebushal.
No.
But the orche bechadacha, something that does require hadacha. You can say bo shali lahatchila.
To put it down.
To put it down.
To put it down. Shara lechatchila to put it down in the kara. Why? Because more likely than not, you are going to do the hadacha. We're not afraid you're going to forget to do the hadacha. Hadacha is a necessity in this kind of situations, right? Taking basar heter and putting down in a kara shel isur.
In other words, a cooked meat, piece of meat in order to put in a kara shel isur.
No, you can't. What do we know so far about that din, by the way? What you mentioned before, though, it's moist. We're going to see how the halacha changes when the two basar and vino are completely dry. Where in this case, a ke'ara being dry and the basar being dry completely shouldn't be a problem. So we're going to see that it does make a difference what kind of meat. What's this? What am I exactly putting into the ke'ara? There will also be chilukim on how the isur was absorbed into the ke'ara. Did it happen through heat? Did it happen through melach, kovosh, and so forth? But also, all we know right now is a plain halacha of a ke'ara shel isur. We have a piece of meat that is cold. Right, that's all he says. Basar heter tzoinen. It's also lechatchila still. Why? If you put it, it requires hadacha. So okay, I'll do hadacha. No, you may forget. But if it's something that you're not really going to forget because you're going to do it anyway. Basar chai. You're going to do it anyway. Go ahead and you can put it in there if you need to. If you what? No, then you can't. Yeah, you already did the hadacha. You wouldn't be allowed to. No. Now, where could this happen? What would you be doing with a kara shel isur? Why would you want to use a kara shel treif? Let's say you buy a keli out of a guy's hands. He used it. It's not new. What do you need to do to make it kosher? And tvila. Okay. Now, let's say you only did tvila. You didn't kasher it. What? Well, after we're talking about it's clean. He's not giving you. He's not selling you a dirty keli. It's clean. You still require hagala or libum, whatever it is, plus tvila. Okay. Let's say all you did is tvila. Because you didn't plan to use it yet, right? Obviously, you would want to do hagala. You would want to get out the isurim, but you don't plan to use it yet. So you may just did tefillah. Okay. So you have it sitting around. It's yours now. That's the scenario we're talking about. Otherwise, what are you doing with a kar shel iser? Why would somebody have a kar shel iser? So we're talking about a situation where either you bought one, you're a caterer, you didn't do the hagala yet, whatever. You happen to have a kar shel iser. Yeah. Or in our situation, a more typical situation, when we're talking about chametz, was a keli of chametz, which for purposes of this halacha during Pesach, it's a kli iser, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that too. There's a sugya about that. So these are the kind of situations where you have basar heter, tzoinen, v'kara shel iser. Now, on this mechaber, the Ramah says as follows. What do we say so far? Is that if this is a basar heter tzoinen v'kara shel iser, you can't do it lechatchila. So the Ramah says, Dafka davar sheyesh bo lachluchis k'tzatz. Oh, that's what the Shach said. Yeah, but Ramah does it with a different twist. Only something that is a little moist. Avadava yovesh mamish, which is completely dry. Here he makes his twist. Im lo bola kli rak betzoinen mutter. Laniach vadava yovesh blo hadocha klal. Vayne kavon sim kuf chof beis. So the Ramah's twist is as follows. I agree about this lachluchis thing. Well, obviously it's understood that things are completely dry. It's never an issue. Dry. How is that ever going to get absorbed? But it has to be that the issur in the keli was absorbed cold, not hot. Cold is less of a problem. Let me ask you a question. It's Pesach now, and you say, "Well, I need a gavia. I need a kois for the arba koises, a silver kois. Did you have to make hagala to that kois, or not?
Not if you only used it.
Ashkenazim are machmir. They do hagala even to koises. I mean, it's not a requirement per se. It's an extra chumrah. It's only used for cold. You use it for wine a whole year. Why should you make hagala? They do it anyway.
I heard Ashkenazi Rebbe clean one.
Right. Yeah, because that's the basic halacha. But there are some who are, Yeah, exactly. There are some who do it anyway. They do hagala to everything. That's going to be used for, just in case it's used once for hot or whatever reason. All right. But we understand that it's a simple halacha that min ikar hadin, you don't need hagala for something that was always used the whole year for cold. So same thing over here. The Ramah says something that would be completely yavish, there wouldn't be a problem. But the twist is, he says, on condition that the kli, where this yavish is sitting, did not only absorb betzoinen, then you don't need a dacha. If the kli absorbed through cooking, through chamin, I wouldn't allow it. So everybody's, the Shach and Taz, basically everybody says, what difference should it make how the keli absorbed, if it absorbed, through tzoinen or chamin? It can't come out. So nobody understands the Ramah. Nobody understands why the Ramah should make that small chiluk. The fact that he says lachluchis is understood. Okay, if it has lachluchis, then obviously it's moist. It can pick up something. If it's moist, it can pick up. If it's not moist, it won't pick up. All right, we understand. The Shach said that. But how the keli absorbed, that shouldn't make a difference. So what do we see from the Ramah so far in this mechaber? Mechaber, all he said was that anything that may require dacha, you can't put it in lechatchila. He doesn't go into details. We know so far that most likely the mechaber also holds that it has to be somewhat lach, not yovish. Nevertheless, you can't do it lechatchila. But the other is a different question. But lechatchila you can't do because it requires hadacha if you do it. Comes along the Ramah and says, but you know how you can do it? Either it's completely yovish, which we know, right? Plus, he adds a second condition. It has to be that the keli where you're putting it in absorbed through cold and not through heat. And that is the only thing that the Ramah says that is very different than everybody else. Okay, so now that we saw the Ramah on the Mechaber and Sif base, let's look at the Meforshim a little bit. The Shach brings down the Bach, who's Mechalik, that where do we need Hadacha? It's clear that only when one of them is Lach. If both of them are Yovesh, even Hadacha is not required. So that The Shach basically, by bringing the Bach down, basically says, I hold the same, and there appears to be a consensus on that so far. Right? What did we just see from the Ramah? The Ramah stands out that he requires the two conditions. That it be Yavesh plus that the Keli should have absorbed in cold. Yeah. Either one, yeah.
Why do they both get
It could have gotten something off the meat. Yeah, they both need hadacha. When we say hadacha, they both need hadacha. Yeah. So the Ramah required two conditions to be matri lechatchila, to put it into the pot of heter, the pot of iser.
Could it be, by the way, what you just said, that were moist as well? So ultimately, you're dealing with two things that are moist.
Well, yeah. Well, if one of them is moist, yeah, it could be. Yeah, yeah. The Shach and somewhat the Taz, I say the Taz because the Taz has his own twist. So argue on the Ramah that it makes no difference how the keli absorbed. If it's yavesh, what you're putting in, if it's completely yavesh, you don't need a hadacha. You can go ahead and put it in, it's fine. It doesn't make a difference how it absorbed. Now, I said somewhat the Taz because the Taz does make a difference, a slight difference on how it absorbed. As we said, the Mechaber will also go along with it, that it has to be, we're talking about that one of them is a little bit moist. Now, what's the chiluk of the Taz? How is the Taz a little bit different than the Shach? He says like this, yes, he agrees with the Ramah on the point where that it does make somewhat of a difference if the keli was hot, if it absorbed Isser through hot or through cold. And he says like this, if it absorbed hot, you can put, he says you're allowed to, put something which is completely dry tzoinen. Remember, the Ramah said you can't put it at all. He says that if it's hot, if it absorbed hot, you can put something, but it has to be completely cold. If it was bola betzoinen, then you can even put something that is moist.
It is strange, because we have a principle...
It's still a little difficult to understand. Right.
So in the same way in which something absorbs, that's also how it emits it.
Right.
So if it absorbed when it was hot, so the choira would expect that it emits, it becomes heated up.
Only. Right.
Only. So if we're talking about, the choira, if it's absorbed through heat, it should be a better case. If it absorbed when it was cold, then it will also emit if it's cold. If I put something in there and it's cold,
let me tell you a secret.
I'm listening to the secret.
If you read between the lines, you have to somehow catch a word here and there. I don't remember where I saw it exactly, which one. It appears to be that that the Taz and even the Ramah, in making such a chiluk, are concerned in an eventuality, a possibility that you may cook it. And if something is in a ka'ar that absorbed and through cham, it would be a problem.
Without cham, it's still a problem. It absorbed. If it absorbed.
It didn't really absorb.
So it didn't absorb. So
exactly. It's not really called absorb.
So if it absorbed, it had to be then hot. So you'll never have a case where it absorbed and it wasn't. Which cases are I'm talking about when he says if it absorbed and not hot?
Because it's not really absorbed. That's the thing is, when you're saying a kli that absorbed an isser through cold, what you're really saying is that it's not really absorbed.
So leave away the case.
It's an extra chumrah. Yeah, kavush might be a separate halacha. Yes, kavush might be a separate halacha of in between. Not everybody, in other words.
So then you have to ask, when he's hot here, including kavush, is kavush here also?
Yeah, that we don't know because we don't see that clearly from the Taz. We don't see clearly what they did by kavush. We'll see it later on. We'll mention kavush later on.
Right, but if he says can you say that? Are you permitting kavush?
No, we're not. Pasha, we're not. Yeah. So that I think, if I remember correctly, that may be the chiluk of an eventuality. But you're right. If something that was absorbed by tzoinen, it's not a real absorption. Because we say, like you said, kaboilo kachpoltoi, something that never was used with hot, all you can do is rinse it.
Right.
There is nothing really there. All it is a chumrah. In other words, now, the Maisa, where do we see a little bit of adacha today? It's a little bit more than just adacha, is when you go buy fish in the supermarket, and they use their own knives. Now, over there's something called duchka de sakina too. So we're a little bit more machmir in cutting the edges of where the goy's knife touched, or some say it's mutter also, you rinse the edges.
What do you have to?
Shifshuf, a little bit, yeah, shifshuf. You should do shifshuf because of the sakin. Because over there it's involving a sakin, you should do shifshuf. I think most people just cut it. Why is it enough? Because it's cold. It's duchka the sakin. Still, it's not hot, it's not sharp. There's no onions. All it is duchka. So something is required. Something is for sure required. Yeah, and that would be a question. What happens if you didn't take it off and you should have and you cooked it? Yeah. So that would be a question of whether the klipa or the shifshuf or the adacha is maker or din or not. It would be similar to this. It may even be more chomer because of the dukkha the second. Because some might think a machmer and a sakin cake more than just if there's no sakin. Yeah, exactly. Makes sense, right? Yeah. All right. So you're right. So when something is belea through tzoinen, it's not a big deal. It's not really a belia, but obviously it's an extra chumrah. So if anybody is mechalik, that if it's a chamin is a real belia, and there's a possibility he eventually may cook it, but in that particular pot, I can see where there would be extra machmer. So that's the Taz's chiluk. The Taz's chiluk is that if it's really yavesh, even if it was absorbed by hot, it's okay. If it's lach, then it's only mutter if it was bolea betzoinen. Now he says if it was bolea isu betzoinen, you're allowed to put something hot in the pot too. That's what's interesting. That's another thing that Taz and that if it was bolea betzoinen, it was in other words it's not a real bolea. You can even put something hot into that ke'ara temporarily. Now, what we do know from later on, chelik beis Yore Deah, that this scenarios, these halachas of putting something in, is only a temporary situation. You don't want to do that b'derech keva, b'derech haroi. Why? And I think actually that's where I took it from that particular. Because you may come to eventually use it b'chamin. You may actually cook. I think that's where I took it from. In other words, what we allowed you to do here, whether it's lach or yovesh, to put it, that's only temporarily to put it down. Not for storage, not on a permanent basis. You use it. Temporarily, you need a place to put it down, you can do so. But don't think you can do that on a regular basis because you may come to use b'chamin. That's the halacha, b'ferish halacha later on. So I think that's where I took it from, that there is always that not suspicion, but concern that one may come to cook in that pot. It gets mixed up. You forgot. It's a clear issue. So again, as far as kovush, you asked about kovush. The Taz is not mechalik with kovush, but there appears to be later on maybe a chiluk in kovush too. Now, as far as the yesod, where is the yesod of the machlekes with Neshach and Taz, Ramah, and Sif Beis? Where do they take it from? As far as putting something heter b'kar shel iser, the makor for that is actually in Psachim, Lamed Amud Beis, I think, where Shmuel says, Kol HaKelim that were used with chometz in soinen, cold, you're allowed to put matzah in them. That's that Gemara. Okay? All the kelim that were used with chometz, with soinen, you can temporarily put matzah there. And from that, the Darkei Moshe asks on the tour, who brought down the Bala Itur, so what's the problem with putting something soinen in a kli shel iser? And if you did, you require hadacha. In other words, why should there be a problem here to begin with, based on that Gemara, that you're allowed to do it? So he brings down various chilukim. Maybe chametz is different, maybe it's a chumrah, but he holds, the Darkei Moshe holds that his preferred chiluk between that Gemara and this is that it makes a difference in how the kli was berleah. That he says that obviously here we may be talking about a situation where it was berleah through chamin. And that's why we have these concerns and these halachas and requirements of adacha. But in Achinami over there, where everything was betzoin and it's mutar. So that's his preferred chiluk. But what did we say on that chiluk of absorption through heat and cold? As the Shach says, what difference should it make? How it absorbed. Right? So remember, at least the Shach, he had a problem with this. So what do we see that this should make a difference? But according to the Darkei Moshe, that may be the difference between. Otherwise, how do you understand it? Why here we have this chumras? I mean, I understand his concern too, his question too. Why should there be a question here? In the Gemara, there's no question. You can do it. So he gives various other explanations, but he prefers that chiluk, that when it's absorbing through heat, that's where it presents a problem. But if it's absorbed through cold, as long as it's shovish, it's not a problem. Here it wouldn't be a problem either. Elamai, here it must be talking about where it was. Maybe it did absorb through heat. Actually, anytime we say Kli Isser, I always assume that it absorbed through heat. Right, Ilan? I mean, you. Otherwise, who says there is a? It's not a real Kli Isser. Yeah. I mean, so the Ramah does have a little bit of a point here, but.
I didn't get the secret. I didn't get the point. Fully confused. Fully off.
No why? No why? What threw you off?
The fact that you were absorbed is something we have to be worried about it.
Yeah. Only for adacha. Only that it would be adacha. It is possible
Why
also. I'll tell you why. In other words, for those who hold that it would, I mean, unless you hold like the Ramah or the Taz, big deal. No, everybody would hold actually Yovish complete. It's not an issue. It's only if it's lach. You know what it could be? It could be that something has absorbed betzoinen. There is one additional scenario which maybe I think it's the Chavas Das discusses it. The Achronim discuss it. And here it's not brought down the chiluk of a keli that is lo mekunach yofe. There is a scenario of a keli that is lo mekunach yafe. It's not cleaned well. It's not cleansed well.
But that was what we were talking about.
No, not really. No. I mentioned briefly because of Yontav and things like that detail. But in the Mechaber, the Ramah, Shach, and Taz, we don't really have that hechetimtza. They don't present it here. The later Achronim do, of a situation of a keli not being mekunach yofe, or mudach yofe. A keli that is clean, but not completely clean. So, forget absorption. It has actually be'ain. But do you have it as mutter? Because it's so little.
What little?
Whatever was there left, that was not mekunach yofe.
So we are talking about something that's not mekunach yofe. We don't need to worry about the...
No, right. No. But again, the question as far as why would a ke'ara of tzoinen, a blia b'tzoinen, be a problem if we're talking about something yavish, even if it's lach? Well, what is the concern that there's a requirement of hadacha here? I mean, as far as the Gemara in Chulin of Tzoyer, Gvina and Basar b'mitpachas achas, there you actually have Basar and Chalav touching each other. It's one thing. But why should there be a problem with Ke'ara, where you have one food item and one pot? It's a good question. But it could be because of that other scenario, which they don't bring here. But that some of Chroinim mention, they do mention it, I think Chavazat is one of them, that there is a scenario where we're talking about a ke'ara shalom mekunach yofe. It has never been cleansed well. And the issue is no longer really absorption, tzoinen, because there is no. We're not concerned about that. There's nothing to take it out. We're concerned about maybe some leftovers. So if it's lachluches, if it has moisture, it may pick up something. But even if it did, it's batul b'shishi. I think, Lefiani is right, it could be that is the connection between anybody presenting a case of tzoinen, in tzoinen. In other words, tzoinen and heter tzoinen, because that the Isa was nivla betzoinen. The Shach, remember, the Shach doesn't make a difference on how it was boileai, because he's also right. Why should it make a difference? Either way, we don't have a problem. Elamai, why do we tell you not to put it in there? Because it will require hadacha. Why should it require hadacha to begin with? Still, you see, because there may still be something there. And when there's lachluchis, which is what they all seem to be aiming at, it may stick to it. So we're always coming down to something there. So that's what the Shach says. I don't care how it absorbed. The absorption here is not the issue. In other words, why make such a chiluk? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Something absorbed from one person's skin to something through hot, as opposed to cold. Say that?
Well, sure, it does. It
absorbs. It gets stuck. It's more.
It may come out later if you cook it. That's the only thing that you could also say.
Are we talking about here an absorption of mamashas or taste?
Mamashas, not taste.
So what kind of a pot would...
It's not absorption. It's not a real absorption, right?
Only a pottery.
Right.
Only pottery.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a real. It's not a real absorption. Yeah.
The scenario again is we're dealing with be'aroi, which means we hardly is.
Yeah.
It's not kavua. One time thing.
Right.
So what if he had time to quickly wash off the kahara out of the pot?
No, obviously, yeah.
Right.
If it's not clean, he should.
Whatever. If if you do something that was absorbed in chamin, so that is you're going to get stuck onto the ka'ara. Then a simple washing won't.
Yeah.
And because you're doing it quickly, you say, you know what? I'm not going to worry about this little stick, hard, whatever meat, cheese, whatever it is. I'll rinse my actual food.
Well, my problem is if it's not going to even come.
It's human.
Remember, let's get back to what we said in the very beginning.
Well, really quickly.
Yeah.
If it's something that's going to come off when you rinse, how is it going to come off when I'm just putting something on it? If the moisture on my raw meat that I'm putting on the plate is if I take the plate and I rinse it off well, but because it was cooked and absorbed hot, so there it's stuck and it won't come off when I rinse it.
Right.
It's going to come off when I put a piece of raw meat on it, just by placing it on it.
Because the meat didn't cook, you put it on
But
top.
remember what we said in the very beginning of this year, that the Taz brings down the scenario of what happens if you cooked it without making a docha. What's the problem? Are we matter b'diavad or not?
But not in that pot.
No, not in that part. So what's the question? The question is since the whole hadacha is a chumrah, that's what we have to remember. The whole hadacha is a chumrah. It's a chumrah. In other words, really, there's nothing there. Even if there's nothing there, it's a chumrah that the chachamim required you to be mediach because they don't want you to put something in a kosher list. Why? You may eventually cook in it. You may eventually forget. You got to do some heker. You got to do some of the so one shot is that it's simply a chumrah, but according to the other teres of if you cooked it without the hadacha, it's mutter because even if there was something there, it's batul b'shish. That seems to insinuate that they were concerned that something's still there, even though it's all cold. It's not completely clean, even though it appears clean. Maybe some leftovers, and it's moist. It's picking up.
But it's not something that's baked onto it. So it would come off your rinse.
Right, but you didn't. Maybe it's not completely rinsed.
But it's not
so these are the concerns. Maybe you may eventually cook in it. Maybe there might be something that is there, and if it's moist, it will pick it up. So either way, it's a chumrah, and it therefore requires only hadacha if you did it by mistake, because you shouldn't do it lechatchila. If it's metal or not. Yeah, there are some that are less problematic according to Sfardim. Yeah, the glass, which doesn't absorb, it's not porous.
But the one who's making the distinction between through heat is the Ramah, so that would not affect this.
Yeah.
So according to the Ashkenazi,
and that's the question, why does he make that distinction?
According to the Ashkenazi, it would affect the type of vessel that was used difference than according
apparently not. But it may if it's a pottery, it may be a little bit different. Yeah.
It's just more likely. You don't have to comment on it. It's more likely that something that a kara was with. If there is leftovers,
if it was cooked.
Because it's cooked. It's like
it was cooked. The Chachamim therefore had their concerns in these situations, and they said, of course, since it's soinen, it only requires hadacha.
Okay, but even if you cooked it with a little bit on it,
right. That's why you wouldn't be able to do it lechatchila, even though.
You're saying it's a chumrah, so how you say it's a prison?
It is like an mevatel isur lechatchila if you go ahead and do it anyway, right? And you are not mediachet. No, if you are mediachet, then you may have done something wrong, but at least you were mediachet. Here they're saying in Sif Beis, you may forget to do adocha, and that's why we're not going to let you do it lechatchila. That's the thing. But in Ochinam, if you did it, it requires a docha. And that's a chumrah. All right, I think we'll stop here in Mitzvah Hashem next week, Thursday actually, Bli Neder, Mitzvah Hashem, Me'ezos Hashem. We'll continue, and we'll go into a little bit about the differences of what happens, in fact, if you did forget, and were not mediach, did forget, and did not take a klipa, which will be an issue in part of this Siman. Okay.